So if we could start with your full name, please.
Jack Wilbur Stitzinger.
And how do you spell that?
Stitzinger.
And where and when were you born?
I was born in Long Beach, California, 1924, at the Seaside Hospital.
And what month and what day?
March the 31st, 1924.
So how old does that make you currently?
93.
Great. And which branch did you serve in during World War II?
In the Army.
And which units were you attached to?
I was attached to the 87th Division, Infantry Division.
And do you remember which regiment and company?
Yeah, I was in Company H, 346th Infantry, 87th Division, 3rd Army.
Great. And what was your specific role within the Army?
My specific role when I was in combat was the staff sergeant in charge of mortar squad, and do the surveying and give the orders to the first gunner to fire the mortar.
Great. And was that the highest rank you attained, staff sergeant?
Staff sergeant was the highest rank, yeah.
And did you receive any medals or commendations?
Yeah, I got 2 Bronze Stars, and I got all kinds of medals on my thing there, yeah. But 2 Bronze Stars is the main thing, yeah.
The others were campaign medals, victory medals?
Yeah, I got the campaign medals, the European, African, Middle East campaign, and the, yeah, right there. Can we hold just a minute? Yeah. I'll get my paper out.
That's easier than trying to remember.
Yeah, I got this paper out here.
They put all this stuff on your desk.
Yeah, okay. Ready? I got the World War II Victory Medal, the EAME Campaign Medal, which is the European, African, Middle East Campaign Medal, and the American Theater Campaign Medal, and one for 30 days out of service in the United States, out of the United States.
Great. Now, which years did you serve from?
I went in February of '43, and I got out in July the 31st of '45.
And you were drafted into the Army?
Yes, I was drafted, yeah.
Great. I'd like to rewind a little bit, talk about your family and childhood growing up. Now, who were your parents?
Oh, my parents, my dad was Bruce L. Stitzinger, and he left Pennsylvania in 1915 and come to California, and he was a rig builder on Signal Hill. He built wooden derricks at that time. There is no more derricks left there. And of course, my mother died when I was in high school, and I had 2 brothers, Bruce L. Jr. and Robert Stitzinger.
And were they older or younger?
They was all older, yeah. I was the youngest one. Bob, who contacted him polio when he was young. And then my brother, the oldest brother, was Bruce L. Stitzinger. He was a fighter pilot in Europe during the war.
Do you know what planes he flew?
Pardon?
Do you know what planes he flew?
Oh, he flew gliders into Belgium, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was actually a glider pilot. And he would fly equipment into the troops over in Belgium. And once they got cut loose from the airplane, they was on their own, and all they had to pick out a place to land. And when they landed, they had to make their way back to the front, through the German lines back to the Americans.
That was a pretty scary ordeal, I would imagine.
Yeah, because they had no control over it. They just had to find a place to land, and that was it.
They had no engine.
No engine, no. And he said one time he was flying a Jeep over there, and when he landed, all four tires on the Jeep were flat.
So were you guys close growing up?
Not really close, but we was fairly close, but not real close, yeah. And I also had a sister, Helen, yeah. And we was all raised in Long Beach. And we all went to Wilson High School. And my dad, during the Depression, he had a job in the oil field, so we didn't feel the Depression too bad. And
he maintained work throughout?
Yes, yeah. That was he worked all the time, yeah. But my brother-in-law, he had to work for the WPA, and he got $1 a day for going downtown and counting cars on the street, intersections.
Just counting cars?
Yeah, just counting cars. He got $1 a day during the Depression.
For what purpose?
Just to know how many cars went through the intersection, I guess. But that's what he did, yeah. We lived with my brother-in-law and sister during the Depression,
okay.
yeah.
Now, Stitzinger, where does that come from?
That goes back to Germany.
Okay.
That's a German, southern Bavaria.
Got it. So, do you know which generation American are you?
Probably my great-grandfather come over.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they all settled in Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania. And that's where they discovered oil, in western Pennsylvania to begin with. So that's how my dad got in the oil business. And then I went to work for the same company, Mobile Oil Company, yeah.
Is that where the name Pennzoil comes from?
Yeah,
Oil?
yeah, that's it, Pennzoil, yeah. Yeah, they used to, originally, it seeped out of the ground, the oil, and they would scoop it up and put it in barrels and float it down the Allegheny River to the refineries. And that's how he got started in the oil business.
And you graduated high school?
I graduated in Woodrow Wilson High School in June of '42. Then I went to work for General Petroleum of California Oil Company till I was drafted in February of '43.
So when you were younger, like say an adolescent, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, what did you do for fun? What did you guys used to do?
Oh, we used to just, in those days you could go out and do anything you wanted to and you wouldn't have to worry. We'd play kick the can or make up our own softball games, and we just never got into trouble.
Did you have any close friends growing up?
Oh, yes, I did, yes.
You remember them?
Yeah. One lived right across the street. His name was Halcyon Ball. And, of course, in those days, there wasn't too many in our neighborhood. There was a lot of vacant lots. And he was the closest neighbor, but I had quite a few friends, yeah.
Now, did you have any jobs early on?
I only had one job is when I went to work for General Petroleum.
So after you graduated?
Yeah, right after I graduated. I never did work when I was a kid, no.
Now, you were still in high school when the war started, or I guess the U.S. joined the war.
Yeah.
Correct?
I was when Roosevelt gave his talk. I was in class in mechanical drawing class, and over the loudspeaker they put his speech on, Roosevelt's speech.
This was the day after Pearl Harbor was attacked.
Right, yeah.
So do you remember where you were on December 7th? Do you remember where you were that day?
Yeah, that morning. I was up on top of Mount Wilson.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I took my brother for a ride, and we went up to the top of Mount Wilson, and on the way down, I stopped at the tourist station, and the guy says, have you got your gun ready? And I said, well, what for? He says, well, the Japanese just attacked Pearl Harbor. So I remember that real distinctly. Yeah.
Do you remember how you reacted after hearing that news? What you were thinking?
No. I just went on with life, I guess.
Did you know where Pearl Harbor was?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the war had been going on in Europe for a while already at this point.
Yeah,
Were you aware of what was going on over there?
Oh, yeah. We used to keep track of what went on over there, and Hitler was taking over all of Europe. Yeah.
And did you have any thoughts or feelings on that at all?
No thoughts. No. I mean, we were just young, and we actually didn't know what was going on, you know.
Yeah. So after you graduated high school, did you go right to work after that?
Yeah. Yeah. When I graduated, I went right to work immediately at the refinery in Torrance.
It's
still
still
there.
How much you were making there?
I have no idea now. I don't have any idea what
Probably
it was.
not too much, though.
No, not too much. Well, it was probably pretty good in those days, yeah. Yeah. So then I worked there till I was drafted.
And how long did you work there before you were drafted?
Well, I went to work there in June of 42, and I was drafted in February of 43. So I worked there from June to February.
Not even
43.
a year.
Yeah.
And did you have friends that went off to fight in the war?
Yes, yeah. They all went off to different directions. And I remember one of my friends, he never did get a notice to report for induction. So finally he had to go down to the induction board and tell them that he was available to be drafted. Because he didn't want to be hanging around, nobody else around the neighborhood. Yeah. Some of them went into the Navy, and some of them went into the Army. They were scattered all over.
Now, did you sort of anticipate that you were going to end up getting drafted eventually?
No, I had no idea. I just went day by day, whatever happened.
You're just living your life.
Yeah.
So one day
I got that notice, and then we had to go down to the Pacific Electric Station on Ocean Boulevard in Pine. And then we took the streetcar up to L.A. for our physical. And when I got into this room, there was 2 tables. The Army guys were sitting at one table, and the Navy guys were sitting at the other table. And then they give us this form to fill out. Then we went in and had our physical. And on the form it says, do you want to be in the Army or the Navy? So I thought, well, Navy's pretty good. I'll put down to be in the Navy. So I marked the Navy. So on the way out after the physical, I was walking down between these 2 tables, and this Army guy reached out and grabbed on paper. And I said, well, I put down to be in the Navy. He says, well, too bad you're in the Army. So that's how I ended up in the Army.
He stole you right away.
Yeah. So as it turned out, I guess it turned out to the best.
Did you put up a fight at all?
No,
No.
no. Because if you went in those days, if you went in the Navy, you had to go right in that same day. In the Army, you got to go home for a week before reporting for duty.
So what did you do during that week before you went to basic training?
Well, I can't remember. Just let's see. I was still working then. Yeah, so I was working then, and then we had to report to the same place, the Pacific Electric, and they took us over to Arlington in Riverside for our shots and everything. And from there we got on a train in Colton and went clear back to Mississippi. Took about 5 days on the train.
And that's where you went for basic training?
Yeah, Mississippi. I joined they was just activating the 87th Division, which they 87th fought in World War I, then they deactivated it. So then they reactivated it in, let's see, I think about 40, around December 42 or something like that. And then when I got there, there was only just a few hundred soldiers. And then they kept bringing them in and bringing them in. Finally, they got the whole division filled up, which was about 12,000.
So you were one of the first.
One of the first, yeah. So I was lucky, yeah. And that was the first time that I'd ever seen a coal heater. In the barracks, all they had was a coal stove, and we had to stay up at night, and one guy had to stay up and keep the fire going all night long.
Otherwise, everybody would get too cold.
Yeah, it was pretty cold back there. When we got back there in February, there was snow on the ground. This is at Camp McCain, Mississippi, right near Grenada, south of Oxford, Mississippi.
What else do you remember from your training?
I remember that we used to have leggings on, and the first time I ever saw a chigger. You know what a chigger is? A little red bug, and they get in anything that's tight, your belt or your leggings or something like that, and they bite you. They have those chiggers. I never saw a chigger before, but they were irritating.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So we did our training there till December of '43. Then we went up to Tennessee on maneuvers.
So you guys trained for about 10 months?
Yeah. Then we went up to Tennessee on maneuvers. And that was the winter of '43 and January of '44. And
so what happened over that 10-month period?
we had our training, you know, learned how to fire the mortar, and I was up there firing a mortar one day. We was on maneuvers, and I was firing a mortar, and this general walked up behind me, and I got so scared, I peed my pants. I was so afraid of the general.
Because of his presence?
Yeah, and afraid I wasn't doing right.
Did he say anything to you?
No.
No.
He just observed what we was doing, and off he went. Yeah.
But you didn't want to make a mistake.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So take me through that mortar training. What do they have you do? What was your job?
Oh, my job at that time, I was the first gunner, the one that carried the sight. And when they'd set that called for, I was a corporal right to begin with, which was a good deal because I didn't have to do anything. I wasn't responsible for anybody, and I didn't have to do KP. that was left for the privates to do. And but anyway, we would practice the mortar out on maneuvers. And
how big is your team for one mortar?
There was about 12 on the team. Yeah, there was a squad leader and the first gunner and a guy that carried a tripod, and one carried the barrel and the other carried the base, and then we had a jeep driver and a trailer, which we carried our stuff in the jeep.
Now, would you guys also?
And then we had a lot of ammunition carriers. Yeah.
Now, would you guys also have rifles or other?
Yeah, the other guys, we had I couldn't, being a first gunner and carrying a sight, I had a pistol, 45. And the squad leader had a pistol, 45. And the rest of them had rifles. Yeah.
Now, how heavy is that sight?
The sight's not very heavy, but the barrel and the base plate is pretty heavy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's why we had a jeep to carry it around in. Yeah. But the sight was fairly light. Yeah.
Now, would you guys trade jobs? Would you rotate or
no? Once we had the job, that's where you were stuck. Yeah.
Now, did you get chosen to be in the mortar squad, or did you volunteer? Or just
when I got there, that's where they put me.
That's where they put you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had no idea what I was doing. They said, you're in the mortar squad, and you're #1 gunner, because I got there early, you know.
Did you know what that meant at the time?
Yeah. And then a friend of mine, he was the squad leader, a kid I went to school with. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went back there together. His name was Cisneros, and he was the squad leader.
Were you guys friends?
Yeah, I knew him from Long Beach. Yeah, he was born in Long Beach. Yeah.
Now that team that they assembled during training, was that the same team that you guys went overseas with?
Yeah, we all stayed together. Yeah. From day one, yeah.
Camaraderie there.
Yeah, but a lot of the riflemen, they got shipped out as replacements to other divisions overseas, and they would keep shipping guys out, and they would bring new ones in. But we stayed there permanently because we was in the mortar squad. Yeah.
Now, was there any other memorable experiences from your training that stick out?
Not really.
What was daily life like for you?
Well, we get up first thing in the morning, around 6 o'clock, and we'd have to shave every morning. Mm-hmm. You didn't dare have a beard. And then we go eat at the mess hall, and from then on, the rest of the day we went out on training, different types of training.
Mm-hmm. Now, at this point, do you know where you're eventually going to be sent, whether you're going to be sent to Europe?
We had no idea. No, we went from Mississippi up to maneuvers in Tennessee, and then we went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, mm-hmm. and continued training there till we went overseas. But we had no idea where we was going.
And when did you finally get shipped out?
In October of 44.
Okay.
We departed Columbia, South Carolina, Fort Jackson, went up to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, mm-hmm. for a staging area. And from there, we loaded onto the ship called the Queen Elizabeth. one of the largest ships in those days, and we was one of the last ones to get on, so we got up in the A deck in a stateroom. The ones that got on earlier had to go in the game rooms, and every nook and corner of the ship they could put them, and they'd have bunks where the guys couldn't turn over. They had to get out before they could turn over. They were that close together. Yeah. There was 12,500 troops on that ship.
Was it the entire division aboard?
Yeah. Yeah. And the Queen Elizabeth, it went on its own. It didn't go in a convoy. When in a convoy, they could only go as fast as the slowest ship. So it'd take them like 15 days to get to Europe. And we made it in 5 days because we went by ourselves.
It's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Ship.
5.5 days to Glasgow, Scotland, yeah. And it would zigzag back and forth all the way over in case there was a German submarine trying to attack us. Yeah, but we made it peacefully, uneventful.
Had you ever been on a ship before? On the ocean?
No. I think that's the first time I was on a
what was that experience like
ship
for you?
Well,
you're leaving your homeland to a foreign country.
Well, it was exciting. We didn't know what to look forward to, and we didn't have anything to do on the ship while we was going over there, and they always had crap games and different things going on like that.
You didn't have any iPhones or iPads to play with?
Nothing like that, no.
Did you think of your family back home as you're sailing across the ocean?
Yeah. I knew they was worried about where I was going to be. Yeah. And we finally landed in Glasgow, Scotland. And then they took us down into England, where we stayed from October to December. And December is when we went across the channel. And when we got to Le Havre, we had about 2 miles to walk to the train in mud. And we got on this train. It was a narrow gauge railroad train, and it was just boxcars that we got in. It wasn't passenger cars. So they put 40 men in one boxcar. And they, in those days, they called them 40 and 8. They'd haul 40 men or 8 horses. And so we got in those boxcars, and off we went towards the front.
So were there seats in those boxcars?
No, you just had to lay on the floor. And it got so cold that when the train stopped, we'd run out and get some wood, and we'd start a fire and burn the thing up, burn a hole in the floor. But it got cold. There were no heaters in there. So it took.
How long was that train ride?
It took us about 5 days, and they would stop at these little towns along the way. We'd all get out, and do our thing and exercise, and the Red Cross would always give us cigarettes, which I didn't smoke. So these French people would, especially the women, they would come out, and I would trade them my cigarettes for a loaf of bread, homemade bread. And they was lucky to get the cigarettes.
It's a good trade.
Yeah, it was.
So where would you guys sleep on that journey?
Just on the floor.
In the boxcar?
Yeah, in the boxcars, yeah. Just room enough to lay down, everybody. Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Well, we weren't happy about it, but we just went with the flow.
Just do what you're told?
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't know where we were going. We knew we was going to the front, yeah.
Now, did you see anything on that journey, I guess the ramifications of war?
No, actually, when we was traveling along there, you couldn't hardly, we had to keep the doors closed because it was so cold. You couldn't hardly see anything.
Is there any light in those boxcars?
No.
So you're just sitting in the dark for 5 days?
Yeah.
And the only light is probably a fire that you may have lit.
Cracked the door open a little bit. Yeah. But
what are you guys eating?
Oh, they give us K rations. Crackers and cheese and chocolates and stuff like that, yeah.
Just enough to keep you going?
Yeah. Yeah. So we ended up by in Metz, France. That's where our point was. And at that time the Americans had captured Metz, but there was pockets of Germans that they bypassed and left there, and they didn't want to waste any shells on them, so they just left them there to starve to death or come out and give themselves up. But that's where our jumping off point was, Metz, France.
So your first day off the train, what's that like?
Well, the first day we had to find they put us in a house to stay. Yeah. And we stayed in this house till one morning he says, okay, it's time to go. So we went into combat that one morning. And all I can remember is we was up on a ridge and I looked over and I saw all these tanks on fire. I'd never seen anything like it before. And there was dead soldiers all along the path. They'd got shot by snipers. So,
American soldiers or German soldiers?
American soldiers, yeah. Yeah, a lot of them got shot right through the helmet by these snipers.
And you're standing up on top of that ridge?
Yeah. Yeah, and the shells are dropping all around. You just pray that they don't hit you.
Yeah. So you don't end up in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
And the tanks that were on fire, were those American tanks as well?
I think they was both. I don't know. They was way off in the distance.
And this is in Metz?
No, this was in just inside the border of Germany.
Okay. So how did you get from Metz to Germany?
Well, that's not very far. Yeah, we just hiked there.
Okay.
Then they put us up in houses when we got to the border, and that's where we jumped off into the combat the first day. Yeah.
So what's your thought process? What are you thinking?
Oh, when I saw some of my buddies get shot, I got mad, you know. And I got mad at the Germans, and we lost our squad leader the first thing. So the first day, then I got bumped up to squad leader on the first day.
Your first day of combat?
Yeah. And
how did your squad leader get killed?
He got picked off by a sniper. Yeah.
Where was he in relation? Where were you in relation to him when?
Well, he was up ahead of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was he doing up there? Was he
well, we was all just marching along. Yeah. And we was just marching through the mud. Yeah.
How do you react after something like that happens?
Oh, I just get mad, you know, and I thought, well, I only had a .45, so I picked up another rifle off of a dead soldier and carried it along. And then the next day, we didn't have enough men left, so they gave me a bazooka to carry because we didn't have enough men to man the mortar squad. So I carried this bazooka all day, hoping I'd see something.
Did you?
Nope. Didn't get the fire. Darn it.
How heavy is that bazooka?
Not too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
About 25 pounds or something like that. You carry it on your shoulder.
Now this is December?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the first part of December.
So it's naturally really, really cold.
Yeah. But it's rainy and muddy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How was morale? How was morale?
Well, the fellows come through it all right, yeah. Yeah, they didn't get down on anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And at night, if we were lucky, we was in a town, we could stay in one of the houses and stay warm that night. Then the next day we moved out, and there wasn't any firing going on, and we was going down the road, and I was riding in my Jeep, and there goes a squirrel. And there was no heaters in those Jeeps. So I got so cold, I told my driver, I says, I'm going to get out and walk. So I got out and walked to the next stop.
Was it because of all the wind that was coming?
Yeah. Yeah, no heaters in there. It was cold.
What did you guys have for clothing
Uh,
to keep you warm?
We had ODs and we had an overcoat, was all. And we had on overshoes, rubber overshoes that we pulled over our boots.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we had.
No gloves?
Yeah, we had some gloves, yeah. Yeah,
But if you guys couldn't find a house to sleep in, where would you sleep?
oh, we'd have to bivouac. We each had a half of a shelter tent, and two guys would put their tents together and sleep inside that. But quite a few of the times, most of the time, we was able to find a house to shelter in. Yeah.
Now, you guys are following the infantry?
Yeah.
You're following behind them?
Yeah, we follow behind them, and when they get pinned down, the riflemen, then they would call for a mortar fire.
Now, how far behind them are you?
Oh, probably half a mile, something like that, yeah.
And you're communicating through radio?
Yeah, they'd have to string out wires. We had no phones or anything. To communicate, they used to lay out wires. Yeah. And but mostly it was hand signals, you know. Mm-hmm. They'd say, we're pinned down by a German machine gun nest, you know. They'd say, okay, we'll drop a few rounds on them and get them out of there.
And take me through that process. How would you guys determine where to aim and how to aim?
Yeah, when the squad leader, he would have a stake, and he would get up on a little ridge, and the rest of the mortar would be behind this ridge.
So that's you?
Yeah, he'd get up on this ridge with his stake. Then they'd sight the mortar right on that stake, and that's how they would determine which way to go. They'd say too far to the left or too far to the right, and usually about 3 rounds. The third round you'd drop right on top of them. You'd zero in.
Now, what kind of destruction would that round cause? I mean, how powerful was that?
It was really powerful. It would just blow that machine gun nest apart. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kill everybody that was in it.
And you'd have to see the target.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. The squad leader would have to have the stake up on the hill, and he'd have to see what was going on, where the shells were landed, yeah.
So how close were you to the target?
Oh, probably half a mile or a mile.
So the range on the mortars is
Yeah,
about
we
a
could
mile,
shoot a
and
mile,
you're
yeah.
kind of in between there.
Yeah.
Now, are you being shot at it during this time, or are you in harm's way? At
Oh,
all?
yeah, yeah. You'd have to duck down, you know, and then stay down low to and just where you could observe what was going on. And then yeah, we moved on through there and went past the Siegfried line. Have you ever heard of that, Siegfried? The ones that the Germans built, yeah. And we just got to the Siegfried line when they called us back to go up to Belgium. So we went back to Reims, France, and we was there on Christmas Day. We had Christmas meal in Reims. Then from there we went up into the Ardennes forest, Belgium.
That was the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
And what did you have for dinner on Christmas? What was your
We
Christmas
had turkey.
Did you?
Yeah, we had a pretty good, they fed us pretty good, yeah. Because there wasn't anything going on there. And we had turkey and dressing and all that stuff.
And they pulled you out and sent you to the Ardennes because the Germans started to...
Yeah, when they counterattacked it, and so they pulled us out of there to come up on the south end of the Battle of the Bulge. And so we spent Christmas in Reims, and then we headed up into the Bulge. And we were walking up this road in the forest, Ardennes forest. It was just a little old road. And all of a sudden it started snowing. And it don't seem like it ever quit. That's when it started snowing.
Was that the first time you'd seen snow fall?
Over there. I've seen it in California. Okay. Yeah. But it was a pretty sight. All these trees growing up and just this one narrow road going through the forest. Yeah, we was on our way up to Bastogne. That's where the Americans were surrounded by the Germans. And that was the main thing, is to get to Bastogne and free the Americans that was caught there.
Was that the 101st Airborne?
Yeah. Yeah, so we was at the Third Army was General Patton. And that was his job to come up there and relieve the troops that was in Bastogne.
Now, how long did it take you guys to get there?
Oh, it took us several days. We had to fight our way up there, yeah.
It's quite a journey.
Yeah.
But Patton, if I recall, he was on tent and getting you guys there as soon as possible.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, he was all gung-ho. And they said the war would have been on. And then the Americans ran out of gas. Because Montgomery, the general for England, he took all the gas and wouldn't give Patton any gas. So we sat there without moving for a couple days till we get some gas. And Patton said the war would have ended about 2 months sooner if we'd had gas. But finally we got the gas and fought our way on up to Bastogne. And on the way up there, I got my feet got froze. I got up one morning and I could hardly walk on my feet. So I went to the first aid station and they sent me back to England. And that was the end of my tour in Europe.
What was the fighting like for you? You said you fought your way through. What was that experience?
Oh, yeah, I always remember we was going through this field here, and the Germans were shooting these 88s, and they would whistle. Then we'd hear the whistling coming over, And we'd think, oh my God, where are they going to land at, you know? And if you was lucky, they didn't land on you. And then you could hear them come over, and then all of a sudden they'd hit the ground and it wouldn't go off. What happened was they had the Jewish people working in the ammunition plants, and they wouldn't, every once in a while, they wouldn't put the firing pin in the shell. So that's why we heard so many duds. But you could just hear those shells coming over, whistling, and just hope they didn't land on top of you.
How close did they land to you?
Oh, probably about 50 yards is the closest I got. I was lucky.
And how intense is that? Are they coming over
Oh, they
constantly?
was constantly, yeah.
How do you?
Yeah, this one day they was just constantly coming over, and we was firing our mortar back as fast as we could. But they were just coming over all day long.
And how fast could you drop a mortar in? How fast can you refire?
Pretty fast. You drop the shell down there, and boom, it'd go off. Right. Then you get another one, drop it down. We fired so many one time, and the barrel got so hot we had to quit firing.
In the freezing weather, it got too hot.
Yeah. Yeah, it really got hot. Yeah.
Now, how do you stay focused while those German 88s are coming over and they're landing left and right? How do you stay focused on what you need to do on your job?
You just have to keep moving and just hope they don't land on you. Yeah, keep going forward.
Now, would you say the training that you received prepared you?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, but we didn't know what it was like to have shells coming over at.
You were trained in firing them.
Yeah, and more in firing than receiving. Yeah.
So how many days did you spend in the Ardennes?
Well, we got up there. We left Reims at Christmas time, and we was up in the Ardennes in New Year's first. And we had pretty warm dinner that time. But then 10 days later, I lasted 10 days before my feet froze. And I just told the guys, I said, watch my stuff. We had to bivouac out that night, and we put our shelter halves up together and crawled in our little tent. And I got up in the morning, my feet was bothering me, and I told the guys, I said, watch my stuff. I'm going to the first aid station. I'll be right back. And when I got to the first aid station, the first thing they did was take my .45 pistol away. I think that's what they wanted mainly. I don't know why. But then they sent me back to England. And on the way back, when I took the ambulance to Paris, I was in this ambulance. It's more like these big ones that the fire department has here. There was about 4 of us in there. One German guy was in there. One guy, he had a cast on him, and the only thing showing was his face. The rest of his whole body was in the cast. I can always remember that.
You know what happened to him?
They said he got run over by a half-track.
And lived.
I guess he was in pretty bad shape. The other guys they stepped on landmines and got their legs blown off. So anyway, I ended up back in Oxford, England, and stayed there till March, and then they sent me back to the States. And I went back on the same ship, the Queen Elizabeth, and there was only 500 of them when we went back.
So you had a lot more space.
Yeah, so we could walk all over the ship, yeah.
Let me ask you, the dagger that you showed me earlier, how did you acquire that?
I saw this, it was either the first or second day in combat. I saw this German officer, dead German officer over there, laying alongside the road. And I saw that dagger, so I just took it off his belt. And I sneaked it back to the States.
Probably weren't supposed to have that, huh?
No, they wouldn't have let me bring it back, yeah.
How did you conceal it?
Oh, I just had it inside my body most of the time. Have you ever, you want to, when we get through here, I'll show it to you.
Okay.
Yeah. It dates back to 1935, the dagger.
Now, you mentioned your squad leader, original squad leader, he was killed your first day in combat.
Yeah.
You were pretty close with him, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I was pretty close with all the guys, yeah. We all went through basic training together. Spent from the time they organized the 87th Division till we went overseas. We was all pretty well buddies, you know.
How did that make you feel when he was killed?
Oh, I felt so mad and terrible that I got so mad I could have shot every German I could have found.
And then you replaced him essentially, correct?
Was what?
You replaced him.
Yeah, I replaced the squad leader, yeah.
Now, how did you end up getting promoted to squad leader? Who makes that decision?
The lieutenant, head of the division. Yeah, he makes that decision. And believe it or not, they had a record of that right then. I mean,
you had
been promoted, yeah.
They kept track of everything.
Yeah.
How did you feel about being promoted?
Well, I hated to lose my squad leader.
Yeah.
And of course, it was a more dangerous job than being the first gunner, because you had to get up on the ridge where you was subject to being shot at.
So take me through that process, as much as you can remember. So you guys are called in by the infantry for support.
Yeah, the riflemen, yeah.
So
the infantry.
I guess the mortar crew, are they setting up while you're heading out ahead, while you're scouting for the target?
No, they don't set up till they get the word.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go out there by yourself?
Kind of ahead of the rest of the group, yeah. But behind the infantry.
Right.
And then when they got in trouble, they would signal back to us that they needed mortar fire. And
so
then,
are you crawling your way up there?
Yeah,
walking?
Yeah. You didn't want to stand up. you had to. And of course, I had that stick too, that they had to aim at. So you'd peek over the hill.
And is this stick just a stick that you find on the ground?
Just a regular stick, yeah. You wouldn't find it on. We had one that we carried with us, yeah. So
your previous squad leader, he was killed by doing just that.
Yeah.
By a sniper.
Yeah, he got picked off by a sniper.
Did you ever encounter anything like that?
I never got shot at, no. But those snipers were really bad, They'd get up in a tree, and you couldn't see them. And they were really sharpshooters, because they could pick out the guy's head, shoot him right through the head.
Now, what is the terrain? Are you guys in the forest at this point, or is it pretty open? What's the environment like?
Yeah, it's part of it's like farmland, and part of it's hilly, and then it was pretty level where the Siegfried line was. Yeah.
Can you describe the Siegfried line?
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. It's they have a bunch of blocks out there where the tanks can't go over, and they got a bunch of pillboxes, cement pillboxes that they can put their machine guns in, and it goes all the. Why the Germans ever built that, I don't know, because the French built the Maginot Line, and it didn't do any good, because they only built it along the border between France and Germany. So the Germans went up through Belgium and Luxembourg.
They just went around it.
Yeah, they just went around it. The French needed a lot of help.
Did you guys encounter any French or British troops at all?
No. No, we never come across them now. Mainly I don't know where the French was. I don't think they had any troops left. And the British was up in the northern part. So we didn't encounter them.
Did any of the other members from your mortar squad get killed?
Yeah. A lot of them got killed after I left.
Well, while you were there?
No, after I left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did you find out that they were killed?
I have a letter from a friend of mine. I'll let you read the letter.
Okay.
When we get through here, I got the letter in there.
Yeah. When did you receive that letter?
When I was in the hospital in Colorado, Camp Carson, yeah.
How did that make you feel?
I felt awful bad. Yeah. He said there was only about 12 left out of the whole bunch of us that started out. And my the saddest part was my Jeep driver named Cook. He was in Germany somewhere, and this one shell come over and lit right on the Jeep, killed him, injured several others. So there was only about 12 left out of the whole bunch at that point.
Now, did you ever meet General Patton?
Yeah. Yeah, one time he come by. We was marching down this road, and we stopped to take a break, rest, and up comes General Patton, and he said, "What are you guys doing here?" I said, "Well, we're just resting a few minutes." And he said, "Well, get off your butts and get moving. We got a war to win." So we jumped up right away and got only he didn't say butts.
Was he a pretty intimidating guy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But he wanted things done his way. He'd do things that other generals didn't approve of. But he was always out there with the troops, driving by, and he had a Jeep, no heater in it, and just a windshield, and wide open.
He's very well respected
Yeah.
by you guys?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they respected him, yeah. He just didn't like anybody that was a sandbagger, you know. Like that one guy he slapped down there in Italy. You heard about that one? He visited this hospital down there, and he went in the hospital and he saw this soldier sitting on the side of the bed. And he said, "Soldier, what are you doing here?" And the soldier says, "Well, I just couldn't take it anymore." And he says, "That's no excuse." And he slapped the guy and he says, "Get out of here." I think the guy was shell-shocked or something, and so he just didn't want any deadbeats around.
Now, earlier you mentioned, your first day in combat. You were walking up the road and you saw, dead American soldier after American soldier.
Yeah.
Did you look at them and think, that could be me?
Yeah, a lot of times, yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
Oh, it's hard to deal with because you think, well, I could have been that fellow there, but these were guys that went off ahead of us.
Right.
But I felt that it could have been me, and I think that bothered me more than anything in the whole war was when I saw those guys, especially when they was my buddies that got shot.
You still think about them?
For years, we never thought about the war. Nobody ever talked about it. Only about the last maybe 10, 15 years. And I never thought about the war once I got out. Went to work, and nobody ever talked about it. So, and actually, I'm pretty lucky because I never have any dreams of being in the war. I mean, I know these guys nowadays that fight in Iraq, they have all kinds of nightmares. But I was lucky that I never had any nightmares or anything like that. It seemed like when we come back, we just started doing our own thing, went to work. Everybody did their own thing, and nobody ever talked about the war.
Do you have any idea why that is, or just?
Nobody knows, just probably like your grandfather. He probably never talked about it. Did you know your grandfather pretty well?
Yeah, he was. I was very close with him.
But he never talked about it, huh?
No. I knew a few instances of his experience, but not much.
Yeah. No, as a matter of fact, when I got out, I never told my brother what I did. He never told me what he did.
Until years later?
Yeah. A few things would come out, but nothing real serious. Yeah. So it was funny that nobody ever mentioned it for years, Along come the Korean War, and then the Vietnam War. And at that time I was working with a guy that his son had to go over to Vietnam, and he got killed over there in the war. So I think they was more concerned about the Vietnam War and the Korean War.
Now, when you guys were sent to the Ardennes, you guys were there to help, I guess, relieve the 101st? You said they were surrounded.
Yeah, we had to. That's great. You
want to get it?
Yeah, can you?
All right. So what I was asking you is, your unit, you guys were sent in to Bastogne to help relieve the 101st?
Correct, yeah.
But you told me that you had already left the
unit
at that time.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened after that.
Got it. Yeah. Can you share with me, I guess, one of your best experiences from being over in Europe? Were there any positive experiences that you remember?
Any positive?
Yeah. Were there any positives?
I don't think there was. No. Just got to see a lot of France and Germany and England while we was over there. Yeah. But nothing real positive, no.
And do you remember what one of the hardest days for you was?
Yeah, the hardest day was the day the Germans were shelling us with those 88s. And I think that was the longest day and the hardest day. Because they was just dropping shells like mad. And we was firing a mortar back at them. But they had the range on us, those 88s. Yeah.
So they could get to you, but you couldn't get to them?
Yeah.
Did it feel like that day would ever end?
I didn't think it would. I mean, it continued almost into the night, yeah. Yeah, I think that's the worst day I've ever had over there, yeah. Because you never knew where those shells were going to land, and you just prayed that they didn't land next to you. And you couldn't dig a foxhole because the ground was so hard. And you might get in a foxhole and the one might drop right on top of you anyway. So to me, that was the hardest day and the longest day.
Now, looking back, 70 plus years, did those events seem more significant to you now than they did at the time?
Yeah, they do, yeah. I've been reading up on it more and studying it more on really what happened over there, you know. When you're over there, you're only in one place. But to read up on really what took place is interesting, yeah. I still learn something every day.
Now, were you aware of the concentration camps?
No.
At the time?
No. No, we weren't aware of that, no.
So all you guys sort of knew was...
Some of them got to the concentration camps, but we weren't aware of that. We weren't aware of what was going on anywhere but where we was at, yeah. You could get no information or anything.
So you guys were just trying to get to Germany to stop Hitler and
yeah,
his mission to take over.
Fast as we could, yeah.
So were you happy to be sent out of combat?
Yeah, especially as cold as it was, and probably saved my life, you know.
Did you have any, I guess, regret leaving your men?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
I mean, it was uncontrollable, obviously.
Yeah, I felt bad that they had to stay there, and I was going to get out of it, yeah.
Did you think you'd ever be sent back in after you recovered?
No, they said I never would go back in.
They said you were done.
Some guys that was injured got sent back. But with my feet, they wouldn't send me back. And what happened too, they used to call the trench foot, you know. That's when your feet are wet and cold and damp all the time, and they would turn purple. When I was in a hospital there in Camp Carson, that's where they had all the guys with trench foot and frozen feet. And their feet they couldn't operate on them. They was purple, dead from the ankle on forward, just all purple. And they couldn't amputate them until I don't know really what happened to them.
And what did you receive the Bronze Stars for?
The Bronze Star for wiping out two German machine gun nests in Ardennes, and the same thing for up in the Ardennes. Or I mean up in the Rhineland, the first one, yeah. Then wiping out a couple machine gun nests up in the Ardennes.
So was that mainly your targets as a mortarman?
Yeah, whatever the riflemen wanted us to fire at, yeah.
And were those were shots that you called in as the squad leader, correct?
Yeah.
Now, how long did you spend in England before you were sent back to the States?
We got there in the first part of October, and we left there in the end of December. No, end of November. December we went over to Le Havre.
But
So
after your feet were frozen, you got pulled out.
Oh, yeah.
You were sent back to England.
Yeah, they sent me back to Oxford, England. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long did you spend there before you went back home?
I was there till I got there in January, and I stayed there till March.
And what were you were just recovering at that time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'd come by and they would stick a pin in your toes. Mm-hmm. And if you felt it, then you was getting better. But if you didn't feel anything, then you wasn't getting any better.
Did you feel it?
No, they were so numb they could have stuck 1,000 pins in there.
Did you ever regain feeling in your toes?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How long did that take?
Oh, it took quite a while, but my feet still feel numb, from.
Mm-hmm. So you got frostbite.
From the frostbite, yeah. Yeah, they used to, and they had in the same ward I was in Oxford, they had a guy complained about his back. Mm-hmm. It was bothering him, so they give him put a piece of plywood under his mattress, and they said, well, how does that feel? How do you sleep now? And he said, oh, that really helps quite a bit. And they said, well, if you can sleep on a piece of plywood, you can sleep on the ground. So they shipped him right out. But they were pretty nice there. And I got furlough and went to visit my brother one time while I was there.
What was that like, getting to see your brother?
Oh, it was tremendous, yeah.
What did you guys do?
We just visited with each other. Mm-hmm. Actually, all I had was about a day or so, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I got to visit him before I went over into combat, too.
Okay. Yeah,
that was quite an experience, getting on a train with all those Englishmen. Mm-hmm. You couldn't understand what they were saying. And I went down to visit him where he was stationed at.
Now, did you write home at all while you were overseas?
Yeah, I got a lot of letters.
Yeah. Who would you write to?
My dad and my sister and mainly my dad and my sister. My mother died when I was in high school. So I just write to my dad and my sister and her daughter, my sister's daughter, yeah.
Do you ever get homesick?
Oh, yeah. He said, I'll be glad when I get home.
Did you think you'd ever get home before while you were in combat?
I never thought about it. Yeah, we kept saying, well, the war is going to be over pretty soon,
Because they had made pretty significant progress by the time you guys arrived.
Yeah, by the time we arrived, everything was going good till the Germans counterattacked there in the Battle of the Bulge. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they thought the war would be over in a couple of months, Mm-hmm. And until they counterattacked there, because they had the Germans on the run. Yeah. Then Hitler thought, well, I'll just build up everything I got and give it a last shot, Says, if I can get to Antwerp, I've got it made. Yeah. But he never got that far. But the Americans didn't know what was going on because it was a surprise attack,
Mm-hmm. The forest was pretty dense.
Yeah, the Ardennes was pretty dense, yeah. Yeah, a lot of trees.
Now, you were back home in the U.S. when the war had ended.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you learned that the war was
Oh,
over?
I was glad it was over, you know, because I felt sorry for the guys that were still over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's see, I was discharged by the time it was over, yeah. And then, especially my outfit, when the war was over in Europe, they shipped them back to Fort Benning, Georgia, and they was waiting there for orders to go to Japan. So if they hadn't dropped the atomic bomb, they would have probably had to go to Japan and fight the Japanese. After coming out of going all the way across Europe, then they was going to send them up to Japan. So it's a good thing they dropped that atomic bomb when they did. Saved a lot of lives.
So what did you do after your time in the service?
Yeah, I went right back to work with the Mobile Oil Company.
Same job that you had?
Same job.
Do you remember, I guess, the atmosphere in the U.S. when the war had ended? Was there any jubilation or celebration that you remember?
Well, there were celebrations, I know, but really not where I was at.
Yeah. Where were you?
At home in Long Beach.
Long Beach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was ended in September or something like that, didn't it?
Yeah. Surrender.
Yeah, I think I was walking down the street there, downtown Long Beach somewhere, and they said the war had just ended.
Let me ask you, I read somewhere, and I think I saw some pictures of Long Beach where they, I guess, sort of built, it was like a canopy almost. Does that sound familiar? I don't know if it was by the airport or somewhere in Long Beach. They essentially put up
Oh, yeah, out at the Douglas on the corner of Lakewood and Carson.
I think so.
It used to be aircraft, Douglas aircraft. Yeah, they put a big camouflage over the road. Yeah.
And I read that like people would bicycle on it, and it could hold a certain amount of weight.
Yeah.
Do you remember seeing that at all, or?
I remember seeing the camouflage when the war first started, and they put the camouflage up there. But I don't remember people riding up on top of it.
I don't know how true it is. I just remembered reading it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, Lakewood and Carson, that's where the Douglas plant was. Then Long Beach City College is right out there. And the Vet Stadium, what there is of it, the football field that they got out there. Yeah, before the war, I had a Model A, and after the war first started, the Japanese, we had to drive around with our headlights half covered over with tape so the reflection wouldn't go up in the sky.
And that was to prevent any airborne attacks.
Yeah. But they did, a submarine did come up ashore up in Santa Barbara. You heard about that? And they were supposed to shell some tanks up there, but they missed them. I can remember that night because the air raid sirens went off.
And you mentioned earlier about the great air raid, the LA air raid.
Yeah.
Did you remember that, experiencing that at all?
Yeah. I lived on Bennett Avenue, right close to Wilson High School there. And I heard all these shots. It around midnight, you know. It started before midnight and ended after midnight. And I went outside, and there was shrapnel dropping all over the place. So I went back in the house. Nobody knew what was going on.
Did you think that we were under attack, or?
Yeah, we did, yeah, but the funny thing about it is, you know, they still don't know what it was. And I always say, if it was the Japanese come over, they would have dropped their bombs and then got out of here. But there were no planes. But that's interesting to, if you ever get a chance, just pull it up on your computer. The Great Air Raid of L.A.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, how important do you think it is for people to know what you went through, what other men went through during that time period, the World War II? How important is it to pass that information along to?
I think it's pretty
generations?
important now, but they don't teach it in school anymore. They don't. But I think it's important that living in the United States, they should know why they're still living in the United States, and why they're not speaking German instead of English.
Was there a sense that our freedom was threatened at that time?
Yeah. Hitler had spies over here galore. Yeah. They even landed on the shores down in South Carolina, somewhere in North Carolina. They put spies, landed spies on the shore. But I think it's important that they should know why we have our freedom that other countries don't have. Yeah. And we wouldn't have that if we was. They had it all figured out where Japan would get half of the United States and Germany would get the other half. So we'd either be speaking Japanese or German. But I think it's really important that they should teach that, why we're still here. Most of them just take it for granted.
Could you imagine if an event like that were to take place again today?
You mean if something like that would happen?
If somebody decided they wanted to try to conquer the world.
The whole place would be in turmoil. Yeah, they got the atomic bomb now, so war wouldn't last very long.
How do you think the dropping of the atomic bomb changed the course of the world in general?
Oh, it definitely changed it. Yeah. We made a trip over there to Hiroshima, and we saw where they dropped the atomic bomb. And there was only one building left.
When did you make the trip?
It's been probably 10 years ago. So, yeah, we took a cruise over there, visited Japan, went to Hiroshima, and they still blame the Americans for doing it, dropping it. Yeah. And one thing I finally found out in the paper this morning that Japan controlled Korea from 1910 to 1945. I didn't know that.
Interesting. Learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Try to.
Yeah. They just got their independence in 1945.
Now let me ask you, if you had any advice for my generation or future generations, what could you offer?
Advice? Mm-hmm. I'd say stay clean and just just enjoy life and appreciate that you're living here in the United States. Could have been more in someplace else. Yeah. Especially now you live in Long Beach.
Now you, being 90 plus years old, you've seen a lot, experienced a lot, and have a lot of wisdom. What would you say are the most important things in life? I mean, when you're young, you think money and material things are important, but being your age and what you've experienced, what are the most valuable things to you?
I would say home life, enjoying your family and just enjoying yourself, and don't take advantage of anything that you don't need. I don't know, just enjoy yourself and live one day at a time.